Stacey and welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today on Bourbon and Biscuits, we're going to be making a salad that's recipe dates back multiple generations of Kentuckians, and we'll be using a lettuce variety that is native to the bluegrass. We'll be pairing this with a Bourbon Shrub. Let's get started. For our wilted lettuce salad, we'll need a head of Bibb lettuce, a pinch of salt and pepper, a tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon and a half of bacon grease, and 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. So today's recipe is really easy, but it's got a lot of history involved with it. We're simply going to tear up some lettuce greens and make a very simple dressing that goes back over 200 years in Kentucky, swapping bacon grease for your standard olive oil and like a vinaigrette. I want to tell you a little about the history of this great variety of lettuce. It is actually a variety called Bibb lettuce. A judge by the name of Jack Bibb had a hobby greenhouse in Frankfort, Kentucky, about 45 minutes away from Louisville, and through much cultivation, he propagated this proprietary variety of lettuce. And it's known for its tight leaves, almost shrub-like really, and it's very tender and sweet, and it's great paired with this wilted hot bacon dressing. If you're preparing this for your family, you can do the lettuce preparation way in advance, but you're really going to want to serve the dressing table side to make sure it's hot. In fact, some people call this a hot dressing, or some people call it wilted lettuce, and I've even seen in really old cookbooks that it was called killed or kilt lettuce as well. So we're simply going to take some of our ingredients now. We're going to take that bacon grease. Now you can fry up 6 pieces of bacon and you'll get about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of bacon grease, or you can go to your, if you're a good Southerner, good Kentuckian, you will have bacon grease always in the refrigerator to use, and that's what I did a little of both today. So I've got about a tablespoon and a half of the bacon grease. Go on and add that in there. We're going to add a pinch of the black pepper. This was fresh ground. Pinch of some salt. And then we've got about a tablespoon of sugar. We're just going to mix this up, take it to the stove, bring it to just under a boil, and add our apple cider vinegar. And then we're going to bring that back to the table and pour it over our greens. And we'll have a wilted salad with Kentucky Bibb lettuce. All right, I've got my hot bacon dressing right off the stove. It was just sizzling. And when you serve this, you're going to want to plate it up in advance, your Bibb lettuce, one at a time. And simply we're just going to drizzle this hot dressing all over it. Now, in my family, this is simply where we left it. Sometimes my grandmothers would add green onions to this. Sometimes we would have bacon, like I said. If we weren't frying the bacon that night, we would just use the bacon grease from the refrigerator so we wouldn't have it on hand. So sometimes we would add that. I've seen a lot of recipes in the older cookbooks where radishes were a common ingredient, as well as chopped egg. So I might add some bacon to this while we go watch Jessica make us a Bourbon Shrub.
Today we're going to make a blackberry thyme shrub cocktail. So what we're going to use is our blackberry thyme shrub syrup, Kentucky bourbon, and sparkling water. So I actually already made the shrub syrup, and this is kind of a classic recipe and you can do a lot of different variations of it. You're always going to use fruit, sugar, and vinegar. And what I did to make this one was I used 2 cups of blackberries, 2 cups of white granulated sugar, and 2 cups of water. Brought that all to a boil on the stove and let that cook for about 5 to 10 minutes until the fruit starts breaking down. And then once that happens, you take your fruit mixture, like the fruit simple syrup mixture, off the stove, and you can add in your aromatics. And I wanted to do thyme with the blackberries. And then you add in 2 cups of vinegar also. And this might sound a little kind of like intense, but the vinegar cocktail concoction is actually a colonial era recipe because the vinegar will preserve the fresh fruit. So once you have made this syrup, you can leave it in your fridge, as far as I can tell, basically indefinitely, and then keep using it for cocktails or mocktails from there. All right, so for this version, we're gonna use 1.5 ounces of the syrup that I made. And we're going to use also 1.5 ounces of bourbon. And I'm using Buffalo Trace bourbon, kind of in honor of the Bibb lettuce, since it was born in Frankfort, Kentucky, and so was this whiskey. And we're going to shake this in our cocktail shaker. This already has ice in it. Like I've said before, you're going to typically use the shaker when you've got anything with fruit juice in it. Nice and chilled. Strain this into our glass. And then lastly, I'm just gonna top it with a little bit of sparkling water. And like I kind of mentioned before, if you wanted to just do a mocktail, the syrup and sparkling water is great on its own too. So there you've got it. It is a blackberry thyme shrub. Well, Stacey, I love it that we ended up both making kind of like centuries old recipes today.
I do love it when we do that, and I think yours, though, as with the ingredients, is so relevant for today's drinking culture.
Yeah, with kind of like the prebiotics of the vinegar, and you can make this really seasonal because you can swap out any fruit, herb, and sweetener you want as long as you have those components with the vinegar. So you can do like kind of a farm-to-table cocktail.
So this lawyer turned judge was just a hobbyist and cultivated this variety, basically a butter lettuce, in his greenhouse. And it was so popular, he just started sharing it with his friends in around the 1870s. And
That's very Kentucky.
Right, very Kentucky. And he never called it Bibb Lettuce. He wasn't
didn't name it after himself.
It was his friends and neighbors that said, we want, Judge Bibb's lettuce. So it became that. But it didn't become nationally famous until many years later. By the 1920s, it was being grown on an estate farm. So known regionally, of course. And the story goes, there was a horse trainer that worked on this estate farm, and he was able to barter using Kentucky bourbon whiskey for some of the seedlings.
That's kind of what I did today, a little bourbon for your bit.
Exactly. And this got it produced on a more national scale. Some of the research I saw, it was so popular in Chicago, it was like on the restaurants of all the menus of all the finest restaurants. Then it sort of fell out of favor when mass production started in the 1970s, 80s, because you think salad bars, lettuce stood out for a long time. But to this day in Kentucky, it's still very valued.
And it's kind of a more delicate lettuce that you wouldn't just throw in a salad bar like iceberg.
Absolutely, and it's known still to this day for its just tenderness and buttery rich texture. So kind of taking us full, tilt back to that seasonal ingredients. And now the one I used today was actually grown hydroponically, so it's not going to have the benefit of that limestone soil.
Right.
That's what gave it the alkaline soil gives it such a flavor. So you can still get it that way, but I think the perfect way is to grow it yourself.
Yeah.
And then do that hot bacon dressing.
Well, my mom makes salads with Bibb lettuce quite a bit, but she does a version which is kind of like one at Jack Fry's, which is a local restaurant in town, where she melts brie on it and has toasted sliced almonds and like a really light lemon vinaigrette.
This does not surprise me that your family would upmarket this very old school tradition. Yeah, where my grandmothers were putting green onions on it.
Well, possibly for some more upmarket Kentucky traditions. You can catch us next time on Bourbon
and Biscuits.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.